The following program has been pre-recorded, so please don't call in at this time. If you wish to participate in the program, tune in at 5 p.m. every Wednesday for A Pause for Thought on Baton Rouge Community Radio. Good evening, fellow humans. Good evening, fellow humans. This is Wayne Parker with A Pause for Thought on the second try, here on Baton Rouge Community Radio and 96.9 FM here in Baton Rouge. Well, hello everybody. I'd like to remind all of the multitudes of new listeners that this is a live call-in show, 343-9927, 343-9927, if you'd like to call in and speak your piece regarding the topic of the evening. And with me tonight, as always, almost always, is Lang Baker. Lang, good evening. Good to have you.
Glad to be here.
And, you know, Lang, I didn't think of a concise way to express the topic for tonight, but we're going to be talking about the possibilities of civilizations, or the speculation of civilizations outside of our realm, or outside of Earth, I guess, extraterrestrial or aliens or whatever. And I was looking at a blog by Michio Kaku, who is an educated guy. He's an astrophysicist and does a lot of writing and speculating, I guess, on the universe. And he starts off with the question from Carl Sagan, who asks, what does it mean for a civilization to be 1,000,000 years old? And Sagan goes on to state, we have had radio telescopes and spaceships for a few decades. Our technical civilization is a few hundred years old. An advanced civilization, millions of years old, is as much beyond us as we are beyond a bush baby or a macaque. And so, okay, he's basically saying there that it's possible for there to be civilizations that are millions of years old, and we can't even conceive of what they are. And in this other article I read titled The Fermi Paradox, they talk about the increasing abilities of mankind here on Earth to look out into space, you know, such as with the Hubble telescope and other things like that, where we can get outside of our atmosphere and see more clearly what's going on out there, and our ability to detect more and more places in the universe where life could exist, which increases the likelihood that we'll someday find life, intelligent life, elsewhere in the universe, but
Or not.
Right? But I mean, knowing that there are that many planets out there that we know of right now, or that there could be hundreds of thousands out there, makes people like these guys anyway wonder, well, there has to be some civilization out there. We can't really, the odds are we're not the only intelligent life in the entire universe, but where are they, and what would they look like, I guess?
Yeah, well, from when I was reading these, I got these two basic questions that you've just referred to. The one about what would a civilization look like that had 1,000,000 years of development, progress, or whatever you want to call it. And the other, the Fermi Paradox, how come we haven't heard from any of these if there's so many out there?
Yeah, and also, too, I guess, what would it take to live that long or survive that long, to be that advanced?
Yeah, from what I was reading, there's this this Russian...
Kardashev was his name, yeah.
Yeah, back in the 60s, he came up with this theory or types of advanced civilizations based on the laws of physics as to
what's possible.
What's possible, yeah.
Right. And
not that they exist, but what would be possible.
Right, and I guess what the argument that was being made in, I think both the Michio Kaku article and the Fermi Paradox was that we have come amazingly far here on Earth with our technology in just 200 years. Amazingly far, and I think that's true.
From our perspective, what we were like 200 years ago,
right.
Yeah, it's a long
But he also
long way.
points out that 200 years compared to 1,000,000 years is just a second, or less. It's a tiny speck of time. So, and we're increasing our technology or our technical knowledge exponentially. So, if we've come this far in 200 years, where might we be in 1,000 or 3,000?
If we're still around.
If we're still around, right.
Which is one of the answers to the Fermi paradox. We haven't heard from anybody because they destroyed themselves.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, we got a call coming in. Well,
We've had that caller before, I believe.
yeah, crank call. No, I don't know. Somebody keeps changing the setting on our fax, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, that was one of the things. And say that again. I mean, one of the problems with the possibility of civilizations is that they may develop to a point where they kill themselves off, which is what I've believed all along was going to happen to us. But
yeah, well, you were projecting what we would be like in 1,000 years, and the whole question is whether we're still around then.
Right.
And so I was saying that was one of the many speculative answers to the Fermi paradox is we haven't heard from anybody because life forms, when they become intelligent, after a certain length of time, they destroy themselves.
Right. Yeah, but and that would seem to be what's going on now. But the way that this Kardashev guy classified civilizations, advanced civilizations, would I think, in order for civilizations to advance that far, they would have had to have become more intelligent in using their energy and not be consuming fossil fuels the way we are right now.
Yeah, his classification system was based on the energy consumption of the civilization.
Okay, that's enough of that. We won't even accept anymore. Yeah, but I thought it was based on the energy consumption or the ability to consume energy, isn't it? Or
yeah, well, he theorized that advanced civilizations would be grouped according to their energy consumption, and then he calculated what those thresholds are for energy consumption. And type 1 is where they're consuming all of the energy of their star.
It's a planetary system. I thought type 1 was
it's a planetary system where the planetary system
is one that uses all of the energy available on Earth, which would be the sun, or on the planet, which would be geothermal, hydropower, solar power, wind power, those things.
Yeah, I think, he calls it a planetary. Type 1 is planetary with the ability to modify weather and control earthquakes and volcanoes and such. And I think that he was saying that they would consume the entire output of their star.
Okay, I'm thinking that was
to do that. And then the type 2 is when they consume.
Oh boy, we don't. I didn't want to get bogged down on this.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
But no, we need.
Irrespective of that, there's these thresholds of the amount of energy they consume, which requires them to reach farther and farther out into their surrounding space to their solar system, to their galaxy, and then beyond that.
Okay. Yeah, I got the definition here. Type 1 civilization is a truly planetary one, which has mastered most forms of planetary energy. Their energy output may be on the order of thousands to millions of times our current planetary output. Currently, we're ranked at type 0 because we get most of our energy from burning dead plants or fossil fuels. And type...
Okay, yeah, I got you. You're right. Yeah, so once they need energy beyond what they can get on their planet, then they step up to the type 2 level where they're using their sun's energy.
All of their sun's energy, yes.
Right.
And getting back just to making it to a type 1 civilization, Michio Kaku points out here that we would need to be able to avoid all external threats or all, I guess, all threats, whether from our own creation or elsewhere. He says we'd have to be able to control earthquakes. We'd have to be able to control the weather. We'd have to be able to control meteors hurtling through the universe and coming at us, which he says
Right.
he seems to think would be no big deal. We'll easily develop space travel to be able to do that. In fact, the movie, there was a movie about that. Armageddon, was it?
I didn't see that movie.
Well, yeah, well, and I heard about it. Someone told me about it, yeah. But anyway, I'm just kidding. But, yeah, then, we'd have to be able to do all these things, and I can't imagine controlling the weather on Earth and not suffering unintended consequences.
That's a problem that occurred to me in this whole scheme of things. Is you're talking about such a high level of technological control of forces of the universe or solar forces of the star, or then at the galaxy level for the Type 3, that what are the unforeseen side effects of the technologies that would be implemented to do that?
Yeah, and that's just one of the things that made this all a bit too fantastic for me. But I guess if we were to follow this line of thinking or this kind of an attitude, advanced civilizations. I'm going to try the phone one more time, just hopefully. Hello, you're on the air. This is a pause for thought. Can we know who's calling, please?
Yes, Mike Hebert.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah, about the Korolev type of civilization.
Yeah.
One major point is it's extremely nonlinear. It's a big jump to go from a solar system to a galaxy. But putting that aside, I think the much more interesting question is what will it take to be a million-year civilization? I seem to recall an article several years ago where they did kind of analysis of how long does a typical civilization survive, and the more intelligent technologically we would seem, the shorter we tend to be. So
I would tend to agree.
There may be an intersection point there at some point where we get smart enough to blow ourselves up. But the real question is, how do we keep? We're at a cusp, coming up on a cusp like that. Another 10 billion people on the planet, poisoning the oceans, and so on. That's the question.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you, Mike. From what I can see, these guys here, for all their speculation, they're assuming an ideal human being, which pretty much doesn't exist. They're making an assumption that whatever group of human beings makes it to that point will have been able to survive the rest of humanity. I guess is one way to put it. But yeah, we're going to kill ourselves before we ever get close to that. You still there, Mike? He must have left. Okay, well, anyway, yeah, Mike makes a valid point, and it is, like I said, it was tough for me to continue looking at this whole thing, but it is rather fascinating that people are thinking about this, and by the laws of physics, as they're saying here, by the laws of physics, these things are possible. But, it just occurred to me. Well, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say they're within the limits of the laws of physics
Right.
that they're talking about. They've used three laws of physics they identify here as placing the limits on their speculation, but that's not to say that there are other limits from other implications of those laws or from additional laws of physics or psychology or economics or whatever that's going to throw a wrench in
Right.
the whole trajectory that they're describing.
Right, the laws of physics do not take into account the randomness of human thought and human attitudes and human actions. And that's probably the biggest, weakest link in that whole idea. But I guess one thing to look at too, though, Lang, is we're basing our thoughts on how we've developed here on Earth, and I guess the way these guys are looking at it is it may be possible that there are civilizations outside there that somehow managed to avoid becoming what we've become. And they may be millions of years old and may be surviving and thriving based on these types of energy consumption.
Yeah, that's the whole other part of this about the Fermi paradox. If you apply these principles to possible other civilizations in other star systems around the galaxy, then how come we haven't heard from any of them? If there have been civilizations that have survived these kinds of possible pitfalls that we've been talking about, then there's possibly, a large number of them out there, and yet we haven't heard from any of them because they could have been around for billions of years before we ever got here, so they presumably have had enough time to get to these higher levels, type 2 or type 3.
Well, and staying for a little bit on our limitations and what we're doing to ourselves here on this earth, it may be possible that there are organisms that developed elsewhere in the universe on other planets that are totally different from us but are still intelligent. And maybe there are animals or biological entities highly advanced in other worlds who don't have the ego or don't have the short-sightedness. Are there not some natural biological processes that occur just because that's what they're designed to do? And as long as they work properly, there are no adverse consequences. I mean, everything gets old and breaks down, but a lot of things renew themselves or reproduce on their own. And I'm just thinking that maybe there could be intelligent beings on other planets that are designed totally different from the way we are, that might not encounter the stupid stuff that we do. They might not have to survive all the man-made nonsense that we seem to create. So then those civilizations would be possible.
Yeah, well, in some of these descriptions of advancing to type 2 or type 3 civilizations, they raise the possibility that at some point these intelligences in these civilizations transition out of a biological form into a cybernetic form, offloading themselves, so to speak, into what we would call an artificial intelligence realm.
Yeah, but they would have to also be able to reproduce, I guess, too, right? Or remanufacture themselves,
or live forever.
Yeah,
or until
maybe.
their star explodes or their supernova
Right, yeah.
nearby explodes or whatever. But if reproduction is part of the biological process, and if they've transitioned into a non-biological form of intelligence that is free from the biological circuitry that we evolved with, that underlies all our emotions, that often interfere in a destructive way or a self-destructive way, that could be one way for an intelligence, in quotes, to avoid the kinds of ego-based actions
Problems,
you were
yeah.
referring to.
Well, anyway, what these guys are speculating, getting back to the ideal and the fantastic speculations that they have proposed, a Type 1 planet would be one that has mastered all of the energy that is available from planetary forces as well as their sun. No, just the planet.
Right.
Okay. In order to advance past that point, once you've reached that point, in order to advance to a Type 2, you would have to be able to harness all of the energy of your sun. And one of these guys speculated that there may be a future of, there may be some planets, civilizations that build a sphere around their sun to capture all of its energy. And I just thought, well, bummer for all the other planets around there that, rely on that for one reason or another. I don't know. But anyway, and once, of course, they've harnessed all of the energy of their sun and advanced as far as they could with that energy, they would have to find out ways to harness the energy of all the bodies in their galaxy and eventually the universe, which was really where I just said, okay, that's enough of this. But,
Yeah, one I read was saying all of from their galaxy, and another one was saying, well, just additional stars from within their galaxy. Because if they've taken all the energy of their galaxy, then obviously there's none in our galaxy because we still got some energy here they haven't taken.
Yeah, well, it's a good point. Good point. And that brings me to, of course, the Fermi paradox, and also the this other article here from AirSpaceMagazine.com. This was published by the Smithsonian, called "Could Alien Life Be Hidden All Around Us?" But the Fermi paradox, like you said, was that if there are all these possible civilizations that could be so advanced out there, Why haven't we detected any of them? And of course, you said that one of the answers to that question is, or that paradox is, because civilizations advance to a point where they kill themselves off with their stupid intelligence, for lack of a better word. I mean, we think we're intelligent because we can do lots of things, but up until this point, we haven't really considered the consequences of our actions. So, anyway, that's one possibility.
Right.
But there could also be the possibility that, look, there's the is it the SIMS or the SIM that is listening for radio waves, or trying to detect radio waves coming from outer space. SETI, okay, yeah. And it's a bunch of satellite dishes that's just trying to pick up signals, radio waves signals, or radio frequencies. But what if these advanced civilizations are communicating in some other way that we're not aware of, that we haven't learned yet? We can't really say they don't exist. We just may not be developed enough to understand them and interpret them. I mean, we can't even understand the language that whales, elephants, and dolphins use to communicate with each other. So how can we...
Why should we be surprised?
Yeah, that we can't understand something coming from a civilization that's 1 million years old somewhere else, I mean, there's that possibility. We just may not have the intellectual baseline knowledge to even imagine anything like that, I guess is one way to put it. What's percolating there?
Well, when I was reading over this post about the Fermi paradox, the writer of the post grouped the possible explanations for that paradox into two broad categories. One of them is that they're out there, but we haven't heard them, and here are possibilities as to why we haven't heard of them. And the other is we haven't heard them because they aren't out there, because there's even though there's this theoretical progression through type 1, type 2, and type 3, there's some barrier which they refer to as the great filter theory, that civilizations run up against this barrier and can't get through to the other side. One of which would be that it's rare for life to actually evolve to the level of being intelligent.
Yeah, but...
Or that there's some cataclysmic event that happens, like a supernova explosion, that happens before the technology advances far enough to protect itself from that kind of super event. That these are examples of kind of great filter that would filter out the evolution of the advanced civilization from passing up to the next level.
Yeah, they did address that really in the type 1 civilization would have to be able to avoid many of those pitfalls. But yeah, supernova is pretty tough to protect yourself against, I suppose. So yeah, that's
they
one of
say
the
that's something
possibilities.
that a type 3 could protect itself against. Either some possibilities for doing that would be like to control that star that was about to go through supernova.
Yeah, and I don't even want to go
or
there.
to move to another part of the galaxy.
Okay,
Got under their
but yeah.
control.
But anyway,
But then, under the second group, which is what we mentioned, one possibility before is like they're speaking a language we don't understand.
right, or can't even imagine.
Yeah. Or some of the other examples are like, yeah, they don't want to communicate with us because we're so puny, or we're so undeveloped.
Or-
it'd be like, why didn't the Spanish explorers stop to try to communicate with the ants?
Yeah, good point. But I'm thinking kind of like, okay, to become a type 2 civilization, you have to control all the energy or absorb all the energy from your sun. To get to a type 3, you have to control it from other stars around you. And this article here, could alien life be hidden all around us, suggests that we don't know anything about what's in dark matter out there in space. And so there may be biological entities out in dark matter that are totally different from our biology. By the same token, it occurred to me on that is like, maybe the dark matter in the universe is a disguise that is used by the type 3 civilizations to hide the fact that they're sucking the energy out of our solar system. It could be, I mean, if these guys can speculate, I can speculate too. But on a more serious note, they also point out that it's possible that there is dark matter here on Earth. Do you remember that? I know you read some of that.
I'm not recalling that particular.
Dark matter does not seem to interact with the stuff we are made of, but it might interact with itself, or at least some fraction of it might. If it does, what kinds of structures could it build, and could any of those structures constitute life? Okay. In principle, dark matter could exist right under our noses here on Earth, and we wouldn't see it. And that's what got me to pondering. A friend of mine years ago suggested to me that if life exists elsewhere, it may not look exactly like you and I do, or other human beings. Because maybe the environmental conditions are different. Maybe the moisture content in the atmosphere is high, and I'm giving a for instance here, so they have gill-like means of breathing rather than lungs, things like that. So there could be biological entities that live elsewhere in the universe, but they're different, totally different from us because of their environment. And it occurred to me that when the Earth was being formed, there may have been all different kinds of life forms from different sources or whatever, until the Earth's environment began to unify or become more consistent. And then, of course, everything tended to evolve into what there is today. But there are areas that we haven't explored yet and can't explore, like such as lava, the center of the Earth, and lava and everything like that. Ocean vents was another one where we don't know what's there, and so there might be life, intelligent life there that we're not even aware of. I'm getting this blank look.
Yeah.
Am I boring you?
No, there's a theory being proposed. This isn't at the level of intelligent life, but that there may be a shadow biosphere or a shadow set of life organisms on the planet that didn't evolve from a common ancestor with the life that we're familiar with. It has a different biochemistry to it than the biochemistry we have. And they point out, well, in this theory, that's very difficult to identify if you don't really know what you're looking for, because the way that we look for whether there's life or not is based on the biochemistry that underlies our life and the life that shares a common ancestor with us through the kind of DNA structures we have and the kind of chemical structure that makes up DNA and all the life that we're familiar with.
Yeah, and that has me wondering too. I read years ago about how a lot of new drugs are discovered. They just have computers that run computations, constantly and spit out different combinations of chemicals, and then they evaluate these chemicals and see which ones do something. And if they think it'll do something to a human body or whatever, then they might start working with it and maybe develop it. But these computers generate thousands of these combinations, and I wonder if they haven't considered doing something like that to come up with what different kinds of life forms there could be. I don't know, but just a random thing to where they could just generate ideas and then work from there. I don't know, but it seems like that sounds like something that would be a lot of fun to get involved in. But it's too late for me to go to college and learn that stuff. But so what do you think, Lang? Do you think there are advanced civilizations out there, or do you think there is intelligent life out there? Do you think we should even bother looking for it?
Well, it's a fascinating area to pursue your curiosity if you have those kinds of inclinations. I have other areas that I like to indulge my curiosity besides, apart from searching for intelligence from other parts of the universe.
I think I'd be more interested in learning what the dolphins were saying to each other about us, but or the whales or the elephants. But
well, we were talking about different kinds of biologies, but as we referred to earlier, there's also artificial intelligence, and whether artificial intelligence will outstrip the capacities of the human mind to understand things. In what you were just describing about computers generating these molecular structures to be tested out, it would seem to me that whoever's working on that software would be developing algorithms to try to sort out which ones are likely to have an effect, rather than having to go through them on a case-by-case basis and get more intelligent as they are fed back the
Right.
results of those, and to where with their faster computing speed, and if you're working on something that's can be algorithmically defined like a chemical structure, that it shouldn't be too long before those programs will work a lot faster at finding the answers than the humans that created the programs.
Right. Well, we got to let it go at that, Lang. Wish we could talk some more about this. Anyway, you've been listening to Wayne Parker and Lang Baker here on A Pause for Thought. We've been discussing the possibilities of alien civilizations and what they might look like. We got to go, so you guys have a good night.